Rev up your engines!
Well, I love this guy, Kevin Williams. He wrote an article entitled, I went to China and drove a dozen electric cars. Western automakers are cooked. All our images of, the Chinese make cheap junk and they're dumping it on the American market, blah, 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 blah. This guy tested them out and he said, hey, no way, Jose. They said they got everything from the ultra luxury to the medium ones, like equivalent to a Honda Accord, and then little bitty ones. They got them all covered because they're pushing it in China. And as the guy said himself, and I've seen it myself many times, he went to this auto show, the media time, when the media people came in, it was just packed full of people checking out the Chinese vehicles, right? Packed. I, as a media guy years ago, used to go to the media shows that they had at auto shows before they opened it up for everybody else. It's like a vast wasteland. It's mainly empty. Hardly anybody is interested. But in China, it's going whole hog. Kind of reminds me of going to car museums. When I was a kid, a lot of people went to car museums and they went to the car shows. It was really something. They were jam-packed. I went to car shows in New York, Toronto. They were just full of people. Not anymore. The culture has changed in the United States and in Canada, too. A friend of mine in Canada went to a classic car show, right? And he said, Scott, he says, the only people at this classic car shows are old farts like you and me. The young people don't care about it, right? But in China, the stuff is going full blast. It's all packed with people. And they got electric cars up the wazoo, where the Americans think, oh, well, we want to put a barrier on Chinese stuff because it's not fair. Hey, the thing that's not fair is the American car manufacturers don't know what to do. They say they're going to make them, and then they say, well, we're not going to make them. Then the ones they make are kind of crappy because they didn't go all out on the things. As the guy says, it's an article, everybody says, oh, the cheap Chinese stuff. Well, here's what he says. That narrative is false. Western automakers are cooked, and a lot of it's probably their own damn fault. I gotta agree with the guy, right? They try a little of this, they talk the talk. Yeah, we're gonna be all electric by 2030. Now they're like, oh, maybe not. Well, guess what? It might not even matter. Look at the American sedan. Regular car manufacturing, not trucks and SUVs, but sedans. Chevy has the Malibu, and they're getting rid of that. And out of that, the only thing they got is the Corvette. Ford, same thing. They got the Mustang. They don't even think about making cars. People are buying a lot of Camrys, of course. They're buying Japanese cars because they were well made. They lasted a long time. The Americans, with their planned obsolescence crap, people would realize, I got the other day, he came over in a nice Mazda, a little Mazda SUV. And I said, why'd you buy a Mazda? He said, because the last thing I bought was a Ford, and it was a rolling pile of crap. He says, I'm never buying another American car. So I went Mazda. And I said, well, why not Toyota? He says, hey, I like the Toyotas, but hey, the Mazda was $15,000 cheaper, so I bought that. Right? It's not like, oh, the Japanese are dumping cars in the United States. No, they aren't. They're just making a better quality car that people are going to buy because they hold up. Where the Americans, like, they try something, if it doesn't work, they flush it down the toilet. Then they try something else. If that doesn't work, they flush it down the toilet. Well, if you keep doing that for decades, guess what? Companies that progressively make their cars better are going to succeed because people are going to say, hey, that thing lasted a long time. I have so many customers now that have Japanese cars that are over 200,000 miles and they're still driving them because it still runs. What do I care? Try that with an American car. You'd be spending a fortune fixing it. Everything breaks on it. GM's Cadillac has backtracked. They say gas vehicles are likely to stay in the lineup long beyond 2030. They all talk the talk, but then when the rubber hits the road and you follow the money, nobody wants their stinking electric cars. Not the vast majority of Americans. There's always people that want to try new technology. A certain amount of those are going to buy stuff, right? Little urban dwellers don't go very far. They might buy something like that. But even that is vastly over-exaggerated because if you're really inner city, you don't even need a car. You still got to park it somewhere and pay for expensive parking. You're better off just taking Uber or the subway or whatever, right? There's not that big of a market for tiny, small cars that are electric that can only go a certain distance, right? And GM's realizing that now. We're going to make all this money making electric cars. No. Global Cadillac president Jim Ross said Cadillac will offer a full line of electric vehicles, but it will continue selling gasoline vehicles for quite some time. You're making something that people don't want. You're going to go out of business, right? GM's got enough problems selling their vehicles to begin with. Add in new technology that people don't want. It's no surprise. That's right. Don't listen to all this horse manure philosophy. By this, we're going to be carbon neutral. We're going to be carbon neutral. It's such an amorphous term. It means nothing. You're going to pollute if you're building anything, right? That's the way that it goes, you know? Well, we got some trees in the rainforest, and that negates our pollution over here. What a bunch of nonsense, right? And of course, then it becomes a political hot potato that they're all playing around with, giving money away, our taxpayer dollar, to these corporations, and they can't even make decent electric vehicles. So why would people want to buy them? Well, back in my hometown of Houston here, people are stealing the Tesla charging cables because they're very thick copper and they're worth money. Now, this is one of the big things that I tell people. Not only is there very little infrastructure, but the infrastructure that's there is absolutely crap, isn't thought out. There were 4 different ones that were hit in Houston the other day, right? And they're all in locations like this. Unguarded locations where anybody can go and steal stuff and vandalize them, right? My father was in the gas station business for decades. We were there. Back in those days, we pumped the gas and washed the windshields too, right? People are there. A gas pump hose, no one's going to steal. What good is that, right? The copper lines in these thick things, the copper's worth money, so people are stealing them, right? Well, they're unguarded places. For a thief, you might as well have a money machine sitting in the middle of a field somewhere, right? Just egging people to come at night and steal it. In the case of the Houston ones, they got pictures, big deal. Guys with hoodies with their face covered in gloves. You can't tell who the heck they are, right? One had 18 of the cables stolen. And now it's 4 locations in Houston Metro have had them vandalized and stolen the cables. And of course, the local TV station in Houston interviewed somebody who owns an electric car, and he said, it's unfortunate. People don't realize how much it affects you. It's like going to get gas and you don't get gas in your car. It's a struggle and it's frustrating. And of course, as you can see, they're building the infrastructure as cheaply as they can. They're just building them in the middle of nowhere, just sitting there. And to give you a perfect example of how stupid the whole idea of that is, and the reason there's nobody there is because it costs money to have people there. And then that would take away from their profits. The profits on the charging stations is small enough as it is. I remember a decade and a half ago, I was in Houston, down the street from the Whole Foods, had 4 chargers. And then within a year and a half, they were all gone. Then I read Whole Foods got rid of the charging network on all their stores because they said it wasn't economically viable. They were losing money. And the people that they subcontracted to weren't fixing the charging machines. It made them look bad. If Whole Foods, one of the most hippy-dippiest things out there, most expensive food, right? Supposedly organic, but if you look at the stuff, 90% of the stuff in the store isn't organic. That's just another scam that people pull, right? They completely shut them down, took them all away, didn't build new ones where they had new ones, but took all the ones that they had away because they saw it was not something that they wanted to be involved in. This is a big corporation, like Whole Foods, you know, Amazon owns them, right? And if they're not willing to do it, do you really think other people are going to do it for profit? Of course not. So they put them in a place, in a location, nobody's guarding it, it's just sitting there, they're just asking for trouble. You might as well throw $20 bills on the ground and you think people aren't going to come and take them. The easiest thing they can get their hands on when there's no people guarding it, but there's no people guarding it because they don't want to spend any money. They don't want to spend any money at all on these things. They're not profit making to begin with. Marone says, I have no exterior lights. I got a 2006 Mercedes C230. My seat doesn't function. Turn signal doesn't work. Tail light doesn't work. Fuel gauge doesn't work. Hazard light doesn't work. Headlight's not working. Okay, well, unfortunately, we have to start with, okay, your brain wasn't working because you bought a Mercedes, and it's now 18 years old. Those things are endless money pits. Let's pray it's a simple thing, which would be your ignition switch. If your ignition switch went bad, it powers everything. And if it's gone, you won't have seats, you won't have turn signals, tail lights, fuel gauge, hazard lights, and headlights, because they're all powered through the ignition switch. Pray that's it, because if not, it is a Mercedes, it's 18 years old, those are all computer-run systems, there's many computer modules. I'll give you an example, on Mercedes-Benzes, even the headlights are run by computers. They got a little separate computer that runs all the other crap. There's computers have, some Mercedes-Benzes have over 100 little microprocessors on them, so they got 100 separate little computers. 100, not 100, on the same car, right? You bought the wrong car, but pray, it's the ignition switch, because it does send power to all of those, and they will go bad, and they can do that. So I would say start with the new ignition switch and pray that fixes it, because if it doesn't, you're going to be looking at money up the wazoo, because you said you checked the fuses. There's nothing wrong with the fuses. So if it's the switch, great. If not, good luck on that one. G. Glover says, I just watched your video resetting a PCM. It showed using a 10-watt 1-ohm resistor between battery cables to drain capacitors. I found a 10-watt 1.2-ohm resistor. Is that okay to use? Yeah, that's perfectly fine. That little difference isn't going to make any difference. The reason that you put the resistor in there is to stop any kind of a surge, and that will stop it perfectly fine. It's all because modern cars have all this computer crap on them, and they have to be drained if you want to reset the computer entirely, because they'll always, capacitors will store some electricity and you won't be able to totally reset the PCM, but that's perfectly fine. Back in the day it was easy. You went to Radio Shack and you'd buy them. They had them all there for like 50 cents, but they're long gone. You got to buy them online, and yeah, but that will work perfectly fine. So you can reset the PCM and then hope that that fixes it and it's not a bad PCM or some other problem like bad wiring or bad sensor. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.